Hello and welcome to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past and talk about their impact and relevance today. I'm Tim Longo, Jr., with the JR at the end, and I'm joined, as always, by a man who hasn't taken a city bus for years but couldn't avoid it on his way to warehouse number 8.
Brett Duville. In fact, I was standing next to the door and kept trying to just run to it.
Yeah.
And it requires a button press.
Yeah.
The craziest thing. And it happened every time.
Yeah.
I've been on that bus like 3 times now. And once coming back, I think. So maybe 4 times.
I haven't had to take it back.
Yeah, you're not quite to that point. There's a point there are several points at which you go over to that area. And I think you've been over there at least twice. And then I think the third time you go and then you actually have to ride the bus back. But usually it just takes you back. It's just like, oh, we've reached the end of whatever I'm doing. Yeah. So now I'm going back. I'm just going to go because it's night or whatever. And it just takes you back home. We are, of course, talking about Shenmue, 1999 Dreamcast cult classic, and a strange video game artifact amongst a sea of strange video game artifacts on that system. When you think about something like Seaman or Phantasy Star Online or other titles people have written in.
Yeah.
It was a weird system.
Fishing.
That's, yeah. So that's right. There's the Sega Pro Bass Fishing or whatever it was. With a controller, I think. I think they had a special controller.
It did, yeah. Had a reel and everything.
It had a reel, yeah.
Yeah, I just when it dawned on me that because every time talking more about the bus. We're now talking about the bus. I'm just going to keep talking about the bus.
Okay, let's go on.
Because I put it in the intro because obviously there's the obvious sort of I can't believe this is happening moment. Because you literally, there's a bus schedule there. You can focus on the bus schedule and look at the times. You have to, it's on a schedule. Just like people are on the schedule when they leave their homes and go to work or whatever. You see the buses going by. And I actually had this weird, uncomfortable moment because, I was riding the bus to work for a year, semi-recently. And so there's that dreaded moment when you get to the bus stop a little bit too late and you see it leaving. And I had that moment in this game where I was like, oh, it's almost half past. I got to get there. I'm running. And then you just see it. And then, and I'm like, To
parallel another game that we've been playing, it's like rushing to meet the boat to the other continent.
Yeah.
And and you can see it, and you can see the silhouette as you're you've reached the end of this very long dock, and you're like, maybe I can make it. Maybe it just got here. And you're running, and the boat's just when you're getting close enough where you're like, oh, maybe I could still make it. It starts pulling away, and you're like, oh no. And you're going to have to wait. Another 5 minutes. It's actually longer, I think, that you have to wait in WoW than you have to wait in Shenmue.
Oh, it's excruciating. Yeah, you're like,
it is. It to have that moment. Oh my goodness. Yep.
And now they just have portals everywhere. So it's like that is the perfect example. Not to jump into WoW, but that's the perfect example of sort of classic WoW versus modern WoW, where now every major city has portals, and you just teleport to where you want to go, for the most part. So. But not in Shenmue, this is a legit, no, you missed the bus. You got to wait real time, real game time clock for that next bus.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't, for me, that distilled down this game in so many ways because that thing exists, that's, and I think I kept going to the street there and I guess I just never, I got a little bit stuck there for a bit because I never saw the bus stop. Somebody eventually gave you a clue, but
somebody tells you, but you can actually, you can go to the edge of that street before that at any point, and it'll say, "Oh, I should stick around here and ask."
No, that's what I mean. Yeah, but
you can't actually. I don't think you can actually see the bus stop at that point. Although you could see buses going by. I remember one passing before.
Well, but the bus stop was there. You just didn't.
Sure, but it's off to the right.
Right. But my question for myself at the time was, could you have gone to the warehouse district ahead of time by taking the bus?
No, because it won't let you leave the street.
Well, but I still get that. If you go, my point, well, I didn't test this out, but I think that that message comes up when you try to kind of move forward in the sort of main thoroughfare there, but it doesn't prevent you from going like along the side of the building to where the bus stop is.
It doesn't,
because I think you still get that message today. There's a couple times when you get messages that are misleading. There's also been some times when even like now we're off topic, but I'm searching a chest of drawers and it'll say, or a shelf, and it'll say, oh, there's nothing more here. But actually I could actually look at the lower shelf and still there might be something down there, you know what I mean? So it's like the messaging is weird, but long story short, the point is the bus.
Yes, the point is the bus. Did you also have an awkward moment where there was somebody else at the bus stop and you just kind of had to stand there with the other person?
Oh no, I didn't have that. It's funny.
I had a businessman on one day, the first time I went to the bus, and I was standing there in front of the schedule and he just walked up and stood next to me and just waited on the stop
awkwardly, like not talking.
And we're both just standing there, and then of course the bus arrives and I'm like, oh, what do? I don't know how to get on the bus, and I'm like trying to get to the door, and then I finally hit the button.
He walks right on, and then
he just goes straight on,
and you're like,
yeah, well, that's the thing, is I'm like, I see this guy just get on the bus, I don't know that he pressed his X button, I can't tell.
Exactly, yeah. No, there's a panic moment. Yeah, it happens to me every time too, where I'm just like, wait, oh no, I don't run. Oh no, don't run. And then the camera's so bad, and then you only turn.
Yeah, and you accidentally turn. Yeah, exactly.
Cardinal directions, and you're like, oh no. And then
it's a microcosm of the whole game. This interaction with the bus. You have to wait for the time to pass if you get there too early or just too late.
It's got waiting. It's got bad camera. It's got bad position.
It's going to take you exactly where you go. Yeah, you got all the interaction issues. It's the whole game, and the whole game is really just the bus. I almost want to find an interview with Suzuki and have him explain. I was waiting for the bus one day.
Yeah. That's the other thing that came to mind is that design meeting where they were talking about the bus, and they're like, okay. He's like, listen, we're going to do a real bus. It's going to be just like everything else on a schedule. So, we're just, this is a thing. And everyone's like, though, I'll take that back because I'm betting too that once he had laid down, he and his leads team had laid down the vision for the game. I think pretty much everyone knew what they were in for at that point. As developers, they're like, this is this. We talked about it last time. This is a simulation of not a sim, but a simulation of a life, and so they've fully committed to that in so many ways that I bet a bus script was not a surprise to anybody. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, yeah, of course we're doing it.
I don't know. I mean, I could also see, right, because there are some concessions to the player, like when you leave the house, you can fast travel to some locations,
but only one way.
But only one way. Yes, also funny. But it makes me wonder, like, I mean, you're a creative director. You know what it's like when you're trying something new and different and like having to reinforce it all the time. Yeah. No, there's these 3 other clones that you're working with.
Yeah.
You have to be able to see them all the time or whatever, I mean,
no, but I'm saying that somewhat as a creative director in that because they're like,
I think it would have taken a while. I think that there would have had to be quite a lot of reinforcement of no, we're going to have, every shop is going to have a schedule, and the schedule is going to be on the building, and if you knock on the door and nobody's there, it's not going to do anything. It'll say, oh, they must not be open yet, or they have closed for the day. I don't know. I could see that. I could see team members going, I mean, this is essentially a a Skyrim issue at times. Actually, there was originally a richer economy system in Skyrim where, based on some stuff that happened with the war, basically you could lose the possibility of having vendors and stuff like that in certain locations. I don't remember all the details, but there was like a much more dynamic economy. And the pushback on it was, now I don't know where to go dump all my junk that I've been carrying around, like all this stuff that I picked up that I was going to sell, right? And I'm near this place, but the vendors aren't there, and that's not fun. And it's not that, Skyrim is not meant to be quite this, right?
Yeah.
But it was. I could see the pushback, because I've seen the pushback happen against something like this. Like, what if I want to go, buy my ticket and it's too early in the morning? Tough. You have to wait. Like, that's so antithetical to so much of video game design at the time. I mean, especially now, but even at the time. So it is just, I can imagine. What do you mean they're going to have to wait? Like, I can imagine having to fighting the higher ups too. But then again, maybe not. I mean, it's like we were talking about earlier. There's so many experimental games on this system in particular that, yeah, who knows? I mean, it's just.
Well, I mean, it's not to say that the team or the executives agreed with him or liked it, but understanding it is more of what I mean, right? There's like, of course you're asking me to do this because you asked me to do this with, the travel agency or, with every store or, or the fact that I can, another example that relates to another note that I have kind of in the sort of how they're choosing to simulate, and it's a little bit a new topic, but related somewhat. And that's the focus mechanic itself and how you, for instance, look at things on a shelf, like in a market. I don't know how much of this you've been doing, but I tend to like every time I can focus, especially on shelves, I will. And they let you focus. So there's sort of there's probably more, but three come to mind, three sort of different interactions with the focus mechanic itself once you're focusing on something like, say, a shelf. So you can obviously move up and down the shelf, both vertically and horizontally. And then when you focus on an item, either you will look at the item and nothing will happen, or you will look at an item and then it will have like a placard come up, some UI, and then potentially you can purchase the item. And then sometimes, especially on non-market shelves, you can pick up an item. He might even say something about the item. You can move it around in your hand, but it's not an inventory item you can take with you. It's just a sort of a point of interest. And so it's just crazy to me that they've gone to the level of detail with which the focus mechanic allows them to do, because it kind of puts you into this new mode where they can have the kind of the rule sets change for you. And that because it's like gone into this first person mode and it's very focused on one thing, you're in it for the most part. It's janky, and you can definitely look at the wrong stuff very easily. But it's, it's just so weird to me that there's these multiple types of interactions within this one sort of framework, because it's like you pick up an item and you want that item, but it's not one of those items that you can take with you. It's just meant it's just meant for you to like live in the world, because all he does is, and sometimes he doesn't even comment on it. It's just, or picking up like jars, right? Like there's multiple times when you can pick up a jar off a shelf and you're looking at it. There's nothing with it. There's nothing to do with it. You just put it right back.
Yeah, like in the hidden room in the dojo. Yeah, which we'll get to. There are a couple of things in there where it's like, oh, this is an elixir of life. I'm like, well, heck yeah, that's awesome. Okay, let me. What do you mean I can't take it?
Now we're talking. We got.
Now, I finally got a potion. I'm good. Now I know I'm back in video game land. Whew! Thank goodness. And then it's like it puts it right back. And you're like, no,
twice,
no. Yeah, there's two of those in there, and then but there's also like the paperweight, and you could just pick up the paperweight and look at it in your hand and put it back.
Yeah, and in that case, it was interesting, and again, this sort of relentless commitment to what they're trying to do with this game is interesting. I feel like most of the items in that room were just to sort of sell the fiction and the sort of backstory for the father who had traveled to China or Hong Kong, or and brought stuff back with him, or that they're just selling this concept that he had traveled, but also collected these things that were from, like, there was a picture on the wall that he comments on that looked like maybe Mongolia or something, or maybe it was China as well. It's hard to tell. But it's like that whole room and all of those interactions, because none of them were really inventory items that meant anything, was just to sort of sell that fiction behind that character, his dad. So it kind of adds that, adds some of that mystery there. But it's a lot, it's a lot to go through that stuff as a developer to make sure all that stuff works for these pretty small moments. And
plus you're having to light all these candles so you can see stuff.
Did you find the candle upstairs before you went downstairs?
I did, yeah. In the shrine.
Yeah. Just stuff like that even too, right? Like bringing matches with you, and you're down there and you may not have those, and they have some there. Yeah, they thought through that stuff and at least gave a sop to the frustration. But it makes sense in the fiction as well, right? It makes sense that obviously in the shrine room or altar room, I'm not sure what it's called, they would have them because you've got to light a candle for the ancestor now and again. And then, but of course also in the room, in the dojo, beneath the dojo, you would have its own thing, right? I mean, because he would need them. His father would have needed those things down there. And so he already had some candles down there just in case he needed them. Yeah. So it makes sense. But it's also a sop to the player of not, well, at least you don't have to go find this thing if you didn't find it. But it just makes it a richer world space when you can pick up matches upstairs and a candle upstairs. And of course, anything you can pick up and take with you, you're going to, but you have no idea what it's for or if you need it in the future or whatever. You may never use it, like for instance, I'm obsessed with buying things in the store. I just go and buy stuff just for the hell of it. And, various things work with the kitten. Like you can buy fish, you can buy, and you can that'll be an option. You can give that fish to the kitten as another food source for Mimi. And so sometimes it's useful and sometimes there's nothing to do with it. Of course I'm buying all of the,
of course you're buying everything. The cat has eventually run off for me.
Yeah. I just did that.
Okay, so the cat disappeared for you as well?
And I found the cat.
Oh, you found the cat. Oh, okay. Yeah. I did not find the cat because I was like, cat.
You heartless bastard.
I'm not a cat person. What can I say? I'm allergic.
There you go.
I'm allergic in real life, and therefore so is Rio.
I remember. That's right. I forgot about that. Yep. Well, it's not that hard to find, but you have this interesting moment with, do you want me to tell you or you?
That's fine. Tell me. I'm probably not going to go find the cat.
Well, it's in
I've forgotten by the time next time I play.
It's in the same zone, so it's not that hard to find. But for whatever reason, you go and you basically, it's easy because you can listen for the cat. And it's just up the street, and then Nozomi shows up, and for whatever reason, she's also looking for the cat magically, and then she kind of finds it at the same time as you do, obviously conveniently. And then there's a cinematic that plays where, she says, "Oh, you were looking for Mimi too." And you say, "Yeah." And, "Oh yeah, here we found." And then there's this like slow motion, just small moment where they just focus on her face. Like she's contemplating the fact that you were this nice guy who went to find the cat for the little girl. And, and was like found the cat before Nozomi did. She thought she was being the nice one or whatever. And so then you get back to the little girl, and the little girl says, "Thank you, Nozomi," because she was the one that brought the cat back. And then Nozomi, corrects her and says, "No, actually Ryu found it," and and then Nozomi just leaves. So it's like, what? But I'm assuming, that's another little moment where they're trying to build up the friendship between these two characters as many times as they can. Who knows if Nozomi is a character in the future that has any meaning, but they have some connection, it feels like. But
I've had some issues with Nozomi.
Oh, really? What does that mean?
Well, so Nozomi sent flowers. I don't know if this happened for you, but she sent fresh flowers, brought fresh flowers from my father's altar.
No,
and so I thought,
I don't think so.
Oh, didn't? Okay, that may not have happened for you. It might happen on a particular date. And I know I'm a couple days ahead of you, I think, because we were talking pre-show about when things happened, how many days you spent trying to get into the warehouse, which we'll get to in a minute. We spent about the same amount of time, but I was on a different schedule. Anyway, I was told by Ine-san that we had gotten new fresh flowers. Maybe you have to talk to Ine-san to learn that as well. I don't know.
This was a pretty recent event. You're saying
fairly recent, yeah. I think it was after all the warehouse nonsense.
Well, I'm yes, well after that, but yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay. Well, I'll call her and I'll thank her because I've got her phone number from the notebook.
Oh, nice, good one.
So I called her, and I got a line which was like, oh, she's not home yet. She's still at the store. So I piddled around in the house for an hour, and then I called again. And I was doing this on stream, and I called again maybe 3 times, and I'm like, never mind, I'll just go down, because the voice line was like the mother or something saying, oh, she hasn't returned home yet. And she's like, do you want me to take a message or something? Oh, no, never mind. Like, it's all incidental dialogue, yeah. But I was so invested at this point, and like, I just want to say thank you for the fresh flowers for Dad. I went down to the florist, and there was nothing there either. I mean, she was there, but there was no interaction, no new interaction. It was basically just the I don't have anything to say kind of interaction.
She stealth left the flowers and then
so it's kind of, and then I went back and I called again, and it was, at this point it was after 10 o'clock, and there was another dad on the stream. He's like, yep, that's another dad right there who's like, she should be home by now, it's after 10 o'clock. And it was, but I say all of this to point out, like, you get into the simulation so much that when you start to hit its boundaries, it's really jarring. And that's actually a credit to the game, because you're talking about all this cat stuff and all the things. Like, I kind of figured there was probably something I could do there, but at the time that happened, I think there was something else I was focused on, and I just was like, the cat's not here. I looked around the shrine a little bit, and I was like, oh, okay, and just moved on. But when you run up against the boundaries of the sim, it's a real credit to the game that you care. that you're sure. I mean, because I literally was like, man, she should really be home by now. Like, I can't believe she's still out. I'm supposed to be home by 11, and I know Kung Fu or whatever.
Well, she might as well. You don't know.
She may well. Yeah, I haven't seen that yet. So yeah, it's a credit that it makes you feel that way, right? I kept expecting to get a different result as well.
Right.
So just very, very, very funny. And then the next day I called again.
Oh my God.
And got the same result again. And I was like, I'm never calling it again. I'm done. Cutting her off, Nozomi. We're all done.
Did you find the picture with the Friends picture in the drawer with and she's in it?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I did. I
mean, a couple things from that. Like, one, if anyone were to take out of context the conversation we just had about describing the game, like, it doesn't sound like we're playing a game. It sounds like I don't know.
Oh, and people are having a blast with this with me on stream. Like, oh man, she's just not that into you. Can you take a hint?
Yeah. It's like we're describing our lives, right? Which is astounding, and like you said, an accomplishment. And then the second thing, which I think I mentioned a little bit last episode, but I think has really got its hooks into me fully by the second episode and session, is I came in not like I think I said last episode. I came in very skeptical. I don't typically like this kind of like heavily, I mean, I like highly systemic emergent, sim stuff. That's kind of one of my favorites. And so this isn't that. It's still simulating, but it's not that. And so I was coming in very skeptical, but I dabbled with it a little bit in last episode. Like, once you start getting to know people's schedules and you start recognizing characters, that are coming, every morning they're on their route, or you go to the park and you see the same, old man there sitting there, because that's what he does every day. you do kind of start having this connection to this community. And it's crazy that I'm saying this out loud right now, to be honest. But you do sort of get a sense of things. And then to add on to that, which I don't know if this would be exactly the same for you because we're roughly in the same timeline, but I assume it'd be the same time of year, right, for you. It's Christmas time now.
Yes, yeah.
And
I talked to Santa.
Yeah, freaking Santa Claus walks by, and I'm like, Santa, what's going on? There's music playing, and so
he's advertising.
Yeah,
he's advertising for Choritu.
Yeah, that jerk. He's just a walking advertisement, as he always is. Anyway, but that that's another
little bit of snide commentary there on capitalism from Mr. Longo.
Perhaps don't get me started. I'm pretty bah humbug.
Send an email to santahate@devgameclub.com.
So, but that was just kind of a bit of a cherry on top when they swapped that, and they decorate the town with Christmas stuff, the music, and so it just becomes that much more real for you, and I think your point about hitting the edges is really good too. And I mean, the other example, and it's dumb that I even tried doing this, but when I knew I needed to get to the warehouse before I had figured out that there was a bus, I was like going around to the motorcycles, trying to see if I could take one of those. I was trying to get on bicycles. I was trying to interrupt the guys on the mopeds to see if I could take, I was totally in like GTA mode or something, which I shouldn't have been, but I still tried, because I thought, oh, maybe there's a new interaction now, or maybe if I go talk to the motorcycle guys, they'll give me a ride, so you start filling in all the gaps yourself, even though, and to your point, they've simulated it to a degree, enough of a degree to where you're wanting to fill those gaps in, like your whole Nozomi thing. You're like, maybe I can thank her, so you're gonna try 5 different ways to thank her. And then they just didn't. It's not in the flow chart. They didn't think of that.
Which is wild to me. I wonder if there's something about that culturally, or if they're trying to say something about their relationship.
I just don't think they thought about it. I think you're giving them too much credit. I just don't think. I don't think it was.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're just in terms of it being as patriarchal a society. I don't know.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it definitely could have cultural aspects to it. But then, yeah, I mean, there could be other people you could thank that if that were the case. But I don't know. It's just it's something else. And this section that we played specifically, I don't know, maybe we can start getting into the warehouse stuff, because that was a whole sort of a bit of a shift for the game for me.
Yeah, I want to address things like Gollum.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah. I mean, the note that I wrote down, I mentioned to you in pre-show, and I don't necessarily know if it's the case yet, but I'm going to describe it this way, that there's a lot more talk of mysticism and some evidence of it sort of creeping in a little bit. Now, the Gollum guy is an example. It kind of had an effect on him when he was moving around. It could have just been an effect. It may not be nothing. And, the legend of bringing the 2 mirrors together that Master Chen talks to you about, and so
right, and how it's going to open the gate to destroy the world, or whatever it's going to do, some specific thing.
And that thing that I told you in pre-show about, if you take the Phoenix mirror back to the lady in the china shop, there's a scene that plays there that was very unexpected as well. So I don't really know what's going on, but it's the point I wanted to make about sort of the mysticism creeping in and things like the Gollum guy is they're being very disciplined with how, if there is, let's say there will eventually start being some sort of light mysticism, they're being very judicious with it and disciplined with how they're very slowly bleeding it into the game, so it's still fairly grounded, but there's still some intrigue there, at least for me, because I like that stuff. It may, throw other people off the scent if they don't like that stuff, but
right.
But yeah,
it has a bit of a Big Trouble in Little China kind of feel. Yeah. Not quite as campy and in your face as the magic actually gets in that one. But as I recall, it kind of starts out with just hints that this is a little more complicated than it seems, right? And then you kind of go into the underworld in Chinatown, basically,
right.
With the three fighting gods or whatever. Yeah, the storms, yeah. Been a long time since I've seen that one, actually.
Classic.
Oh, I know. I saw it on the big screen in the AFI some years ago. But
you saw it when it was out, right? Like,
well, yeah, sure. But I took the kids to see it like 10 years ago. Anyway,
that was an age joke that didn't land. Anyway,
okay. As I was saying, Jack Burton, me,
right.
I don't really know where that's going either. There are some things where the way that character moves are pretty, definitely have sort of they're bleeding in sort of the sort of kung fu wire type stuff, that you'd see in film. Mm-hmm. You're also bringing in some tropes of, so you've got these sort of ancient artifacts or whatever, and it's, he probably didn't think that you had both of them, which is weird. It seems like maybe his dad wouldn't want to keep them together if that's such a big danger. Like, there's definitely some plot holes with that. But I guess I want to kind of echo the sort of magic that the game had at that point when I discovered that there was this room beneath the dojo. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty magical thing once you figure out all the steps and you go. I love that he goes to this antique shop and the vendor there is like, oh, your father gave me something to give to you when you came of age or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he takes it out of the box. It's in this nice little box, and it's wrapped in tissue paper, and then he puts it in his back pocket. Just like kids these days.
Yeah. Totally.
It's hilarious.
He's carrying
the whole
the mirror around with him everywhere.
Yeah, and he's also carrying the mirror apparently in a pocket as well. I'm just wandering around with this thing. So it's like there's some weird mix there and that's probably just mechanical necessity or whatever. He's got to have the thing on him all the time and whatnot, because you never know in this game, with it being open world, when he's going to go. I mean, it would be excessive if he had to like literally be carrying the thing, in his hand or something like that. Mm-hmm. Because then it would limit you. And I think that they, there's mechanical choices around that they're like, okay, I guess we can have sort of an infinite pocket because you've got lots of objects that you potentially have picked up. You've picked up some kind of scroll that I haven't found. There's any number of objects that you can pick up in the house. There's the map the homeless guy gives you, mm-hmm. which looks very different in your inventory than when you actually examine it.
I didn't notice that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, in the inventory it looks like there's like an image. It looks like a textured thing, and then you take it out. It's like crayon that's been drawn on a piece of paper with the lines for the warehouses. It's not representative at all. It's just all this stuff that you're apparently carrying around with you all the time. The candles and the matches and a tape recorder and a couple of different tapes and any gotcha that you've found that you've managed to get in the slot machines if you've done that, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's probably stuff that you can buy in the shops because you're right, I have not done a lot of that. I kind of forgot you could do it.
There's a subset that they have that seems to be pretty consistent for every shop. So it's like they don't have infinite, it's not like a large set. Like chips, for instance, or you're going to find in most markets, and they're the same chips. Caramel. You can buy caramel, fig. I did buy some caramel. Yeah, so. Of course. There you go. See, so you have your preference.
And then I got the little raffle ticket.
Oh, yes, right. Yep, I got that once too. Didn't get anything. I don't know.
Yeah, me either.
I've got one tape. I don't know what the tape collectible is all about, but I did find one cassette tape. There looks like there's a whole bunch around, so that might be sort of one of those optional, harder to find collectibles.
Yeah.
So
I did. Yeah, I did find those. You can just basically activate it in your inventory and just listen to that song in your inventory.
Yeah, I did that with the one I found, which was just like a song or something. But one, to your point about sort of like the item interactions, and this relates to the warehouse section that I know we want to talk about, the stealth section a little bit. But one thing to kind of talk about it in reverse order a little bit, in the stealth section, you through that mini QTE, you get the flashlight, right?
Right.
That you use in that stealth section. When you get to the underground room in the dojo, you still have the flashlight, and so I just turned it on. When you start walking, you don't necessarily need to turn it on, but I wanted to see if it would work because it's not so dark that you can't see. But it worked. He pulls it out, and you start walking, and the flashlight. So it's like they know critical path-wise you already have this thing. They allowed you to use it in a mechanical way, so it's not like necessarily just a scripted one-off thing. Because it kind of gives you that impression in the stealth section that this is very one-offy. But it turns out you can pull it out in certain other. Well, I guess you probably can pull it out anytime. I didn't try.
You can pull it out at any time. Yeah.
So,
but you have a limitation on battery, although you can find more batteries. In your father's.
I did find those. I didn't know what to do with them though. Huh.
I imagine that's what they're for. You can probably buy some too, I bet.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, maybe. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned last episode that there was a flashback scene you got in the kitchen with your dad. Is it in the kitchen?
Right.
How did you trigger that? Because I was trying to trigger it, and I think it must just not be available to me.
Yeah, it might only be on the first day or whatever, but I focused basically on the bowl of food that's in the seat, in front of the seat in the kitchen.
Yeah. I can't get it because I've tried that from every freaking angle I can think of. But
I got it that one day, and I wonder if it's just the thing you can only get that one day, which is also just a wild thing, that there's just stuff you just can only get the one time, the one short window. Like, I'm now worried about my relationship with Nozomi. Will it never improve?
There's nothing there. There's nothing to worry about. Don't worry. I
want to have the full impact of the tearful goodbye when I go off to Hong Kong.
Well, I mean, that is a small segue to what we were dancing around the basically the topic of another one that we put down and that I have in my notes is just these unique scenes, optional scenes that will occur or not occur. They're not critical path. It depends on what order you do things in. And I was referencing earlier sort of the flow chart of this game, which I would love to see if I can find one. The logic flow chart. And there's dangling boxes on that flow chart that, will happen, special scenes that will happen or not happen depending on, so it is an open world game structurally, but it's it seems to be very like duct tape and bubblegum scripts, that are just barely, fit together. And I debugging this game must have been a nightmare because of that. That scene, the flashback scene with your father, right? That's an example, right? Like there's this one logic case where it will play and then it won't play ever again. And there's something magical that they went so far as to allow that to happen. It's much easier in sort of a Rockstar game where the game itself is much more fully systemic, where things will happen based on everything clashing together versus this being a spaghetti script probably of these things happening. And the cases of that. I mean, David Cage clearly owes a lot to this game.
Oh yeah, good call.
In so many ways, not even just QTEs, but the structure of it, right? And
oh yeah, sure. I mean, I'm thinking about now being in the house in what was the one on
Heavy Rain?
Heavy Rain. Thank you. The origami killer. Where you're in the house and you can go in and you can go into your office and do some architecture stuff, and you could kind of wander around the kitchen and open different cabinets and take things out and put them back and look in the fridge. Like you've just got all these things that you can do. And some of them will trigger little mini cutscenes and things like that. It's very, very similar to this in that way. Although it jumps around in time and with different narratives. And that seems to be more in his wanting to make
different
a
characters
film
too. Yeah.
Yeah, and have a set of characters, right?
But I mean, there is a lot to like mirror with this. I wonder if he's ever referenced this game, and if he hasn't, that's BS. Because I mean,
yeah, that would be a big omission. Because clearly,
it's too close. I mean, yes.
Although I don't know, man, because Omicron the Nomad's Soul, right, would have been back around this time, and in fact, it was the same year. And that was the first his first. That is a little bit more traditional as far as an adventure game goes.
That's a little more real time. I feel like that one's a little more anachronistic-ish than this. But Fahrenheit was after that. Was right after that.
Oh, definitely Fahrenheit's after. Mm-hmm.
All right, it's in the ballpark, but still, I don't know. I think the reason this is put on the pedestal that it is because there wasn't anything.
Wasn't a lot else out there, yeah.
But anyway.
Also, I would honestly say I do think that in many ways it is superior to the Cage stuff by sticking with the single life, and by, even though there's this heightened storyline, it's not constantly heightened. And in being as sort of just detail oriented as it is, I want to say it finds just the right register. I think the tension between those things is, there's this sort of revenge story, but he's still just this kid, right? Who's not, who's only got so much power in the world to change things, and he's kind of finding his way and
grounded.
Yeah, it's a lot more grounded. It's not constantly trying to push for heightened things, heightened events and things like that, which I know is a lot of the drama of a Cage thing. But
well, I think the other element that, and I'm definitely not a Cage like fan or playing. I haven't played all of his stuff, but he doesn't really build worlds, right? He's building a series of scenes.
Right.
And this has scenes, and there, it is a interactive film or whatever that the wiki said. It has those elements to it, but in between the
fully reactive eye environment, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, that's the weirdest term. But in between those scenes, you are playing in a simulation of his life, right? So you are going down the same streets and over again. You're taking buses and stuff. And Cage skips all that stuff. You might be able to open drawers in your apartment, but that's that one apartment, and the scene in that apartment is very crafted for that purpose. Am I right on that?
Yeah, no, you're right. And I guess that's what makes this experience a lot more sublime.
Yeah.
Is that in this, there's all these other people who are having their lives at the same time. It's not just there to be padding. It feels like padding in the Cage games. Like, this is completely unnecessary stuff. You need to do a certain amount of it sometimes just to get the scene to advance. And then it's just like, ugh. Whereas here it's more like, okay, well, in 4 hours, that store's going to open. Or whatever, the nightclubs are going to open at 8:00 or whatever it is, and I guess I'll just wait. Like, what do I do? I guess I'll just wander around in town and see if I can find something interesting to do. It's a totally different kind of approach, and like I said, it feels more sublime for it. So
and that there's I don't think I might have said this on the cast before, but there's sort of a way to think about, coming from my theater past, there's a way to think about plays and characters' lives in plays that a old instructor that I really, really admired said to me at one point. And the way he kind of taught, he was a directing teacher. So he taught the directing courses. And he talked about with theater, the way you analyze the characters is you have to think about why this day is the day that is being, is the choice for presenting it to the audience, right? This is the most important day or time span in this character's life. And so you have to think about it from that perspective, because this is the script, this is the life that's being presented to the audience. And I feel like Cage's stuff, the reason I'm bringing it up is Cage is much more closely related to linear media like film and theater in the way that he presents stuff. Yes, there's branching, and yes, there's choice, but these are the most important moments of these characters' lives. But in Ryu's life, like, you could just wander down the street, and that particular day, nothing important might happen. You could go through that whole day and just do mini games or just miss the timing. Like, I've had some days where I just didn't I didn't know what I needed to do exactly. So I everything closed before I did what I did.
You had the wherewithal, right? Sure.
And then I was like, okay, I guess
I've had days like that, Tim. I've had days like that.
Exactly. Well, this day is wasted. And so then I just have to go home and go to bed, and that was not an important day in Ryu's life. But that can't happen in a play or in a film, right? Because you're putting all of your money and effort and creativity into this scene or this movie or this day in the life of, and that always stuck with me because, especially like whatever, I'll use the douchiest example, like in Hamlet, like that definitely is the most important moments in Hamlet's life in all of those scenes, right? And that's what Shakespeare chose to show us. He didn't show us the rest of Hamlet's life or what happened before or after or whatever. It's this. And that heightens, like you said, the drama of it, and it makes it very one-off and specific and potentially cool if done right. But, that's why I love games. It's just...
Right. But I guess what I'm getting at, though, is in a Cage game, is it's as if, all plays had to be 2 hours long. And you had a short hour and 15-minute play. And so then you had a scene in which the characters were just in their space and they just walked around and looked at every object in it and said something about it because they needed to add 45 minutes, right? Because it feels that way in a Cage game. It's like, well, the important thing that's going to happen in this scene with the guy is that we're going to establish a connection between he and his kids so that you care when one of them disappears because you're a monster. They won't care otherwise, right? So that's the important thing that has to happen in all this scene. But we have to have all this other stuff to do for what? While we're waiting for them to come home? It's not like none of it means anything, but you have to do a certain number of them or something to trigger things to move along. So it's just weird.
That's mechanically how it works.
Mechanically, as I recall. I mean, and some of it's tutorial, right? There's a certain amount. It's like, there's some things that work different ways than others. Like, I want to have the orange juice, so I got to shake it, and it just shows like this is a shake motion on their controller or whatever.
Right.
So there might be some of that, but I think that that's also true of a lot of the scenes in the game where in those games where it's just there's a certain amount of stuff that's interactable, and it's cool and all that it's all interactable, but it's also, it feels like it has nothing to do with the rest of what's going on in the world. But there's still just like, it's ill motivated. It's like an L noir where you can look at like every piece of dust or dirt that's around the crime scene, and it's like, why am I looking at like every cigarette butt? Like, none of these are clues anymore, right? It's just stuff that's in the environment. And I've already identified what the clues are, but I don't know if I've missed something. So I'm going to go to everything that I can press the X button over.
Right. Well, in that case, they're trying to simulate like what it is to be an investigator, right? Where you are looking at every little thing. I'm not saying they were successful, but but it's like,
maybe.
Yeah. And I don't want to, like, I probably did a bad job at describing my theater reference, but I don't want to give the impression that, even in plays, like Chekhov is a good example. Now I'm getting really douchey talking about Chekhov, but
yeah, here we go.
But Chekhov does have a lot of mundane scenes, like you're talking about with the house in Heavy Rain, where not a lot happens, and they are there to, sort of equalize the balance of the play. So when something dramatic does happen, there's good contrast there. So, that can still, in the Cage, that walking around the house, that still is, it doesn't have to be heightened drama, but it is an important scene for the context of the story that, like you said, that you have this connection with the family. That's still important. But my point is that's still a specific scene that was crafted to do a certain thing. Even if the mechanics of it are silly, there's still a purpose to it.
No, yeah, you're right. I definitely can see that. Yeah.
So maybe we're actually we may be saying actually two separate points. I'm just
I think we are, but no, and that's also a good point though. I kind of wasn't grasping that part of it, I guess. Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's still like a story structural importance of this thing that is trying to establish in the player. I mean, I kind of nodded at that for like. It's to establish you as a family guy, and these are the things you're going to lose later when after your child dies and all this stuff. So there are definitely reasons to do it.
And what's occurring to me now that as we're talking about this subject, at least my lens topic on the subject, and because I just said I would love to see a flow chart of how the logic of this game works. Because it'd be interesting to see all the different possibilities. Similar to like, doesn't Cage eventually like even show you the flow charts in the games, like chapters, like you can see what you did and didn't do or whatever? Yeah,
in a way, yeah.
But what's dawning on me that really supports what you're saying, I think, or both of us are saying, is that only a flow. If you looked at Shenmue only through the flow chart lens, it's actually doing it a disservice, because the flow chart will only represent those storytelling moments, whether they're critical path or not, that would be represented in a scene or an inciting incident of some kind. It wouldn't actually include the world part, the flowchart.
Right.
And the world part.
Yeah, what we actually want is a chart that looks more like the homeless man's map of where the guards are going to be.
Well, the segue. Good job. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right. Because it just shows where everybody's going to be.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It shows there's 3 guards on this blue path, and here's, how far apart they are, and they're going to be here at these different times.
Wait,
and yes,
showed the guards?
What's that?
Your map showed the guards?
Yes. After I failed enough.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're okay. So, because what that map does is it adds what you discover, right, every time you fail, right?
Yeah, so it didn't do that super well for me.
Because if you look and if you find one of the other numbers, right?
I knew exactly where 8 was. There was so on like my 5th time, this was like Groundhog Day doing this section. So there's a stealth section in the warehouse district, in the old warehouse district, where you have to sneak in one night. You get this flashlight because you bump the shack or whatever that the guard's in. You get a QTE to grab the flashlight.
My second favorite QTE. I'll tell you my first later.
Okay. And then, you haven't got to my favorite thus far, mostly because of the comic failure, how many times I failed it. Anyway, you have basically a stealth section where there's guards patrolling this area, and you have to sneak around. And if they ever see you, you can try to outrun them and like hide. And I actually did that successfly once.
Really?
Then you got caught again. Yeah. You have to. They kind of see you from a certain amount of distance, and then you can run and sort of, if you dodge down an alley and hide behind a thing, you can actually get away. But it doesn't always work. It was pretty inconsistent.
I tried. I never succeeded at that, though.
Yeah. Anyway, unlike the 4th night, I'm like, well, I'm going to just figure out where 8 is, my target, so that at least I can know where I'm going. And I just started running through the place so I could see the numbers on things.
Yeah, that's what I did too.
Yeah, so I figured out where 8 was. I was like, okay, now I know where my goal is. I finally failed enough that this homeless man gave me a map, and all it had was like the number 6 on it or something like that. Just one of the
But you
warehouses.
know why that was like that? So the number 6 was on the map because you had probably accidentally focused on the number 6, and then it filled it in for you. So if you go around and focus on
none of the other numbers ever filled in for me because I knew where 8 was.
Yeah,
at that point.
Yeah.
So I never looked at any of the other ones, and I guess when he gave me the map, he's like, "This will be real helpful." I'm like, "Oh, awesome!" And he gives me this thing, and it's like a piece of paper with 1,000,000 boxes on it and a number 6. And I'm like, "Gosh, thanks!
Yeah,
that's so great."
Yeah,
but then I failed a number more times, and then actually he says, "No, here, let me show you," and he like draws basically the guard patrol paths.
Oh, I didn't get that part. Okay,
so you didn't fail enough. And then it's actually fairly easy, although I even jumped the gun there once where I tried to get ahead of one so that I could wait, and he spotted me as I did it. So it was ludicrous the number of times I did that. It's probably 11 separate nights.
Yeah. I mean,
it was December 20th when I finally finished that section. So
yeah, I don't think it took me that many, but the main point, I mean, there's almost nothing to talk about with the stealth section itself. It's just so bad, but and hard and cumbersome to really use. But I wanted to talk about the old man specifically as a hilarious sort of solution to a dynamic difficulty problem, where somebody is failing a lot. And different games, obviously, across time have dealt with this in different ways. But, it's an in-fiction, in-world solution to a difficulty problem like this, right? And who knows when it would have been introduced, probably after so many people failed in playtesting, let's hope. And I just love the fact that this homeless man walks up after you failed so many times, and he even says stuff like, "I've been watching you," or something like that. Yeah. Like, I think you could, I've memorized it. I think you could use this. And then how funny it is that it on its well, and then I didn't know this until you just said that there's actually different levels of clarity to it. It starts off empty, and then as you shine lights on each of the numbers, you fill it in yourself, and then he eventually fills in the guard path. So it's like it actually has different layers, which is actually pretty cool for them to implement. I wonder if there will be, I'm going to guess that there will never be another stealth section in the game. But because of the type of game it is, and so much of it is so one-off, but I don't know, maybe there's another one, but it's just hilarious section. And very surprising. I was actually so I had a funny thing happen to that section for me, not the stealth section, but right before that, when I was trying to get into the original Warehouse 8, and you find the one in the back, and no indication that you can push blocks. I spent a lot of time being stuck right there. But the reason that I was stuck is I always had this weird, vague memory of people talking about using a forklift in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that's going to come, and it's probably not far from now that we're going to use a forklift. But before memes were a thing, it was a meme. It was like, oh, the forklift in Shenmue, hilarious, driving a forklift. What game, video games never let you drive forklifts. So in my head, when I saw that window, I was like, oh, this is the forklift section. I got to go find a forklift. And so I spent probably a half an hour running all around trying to figure out how to hijack a forklift. I saw a forklift in one of the buildings that I couldn't, and I had gotten myself so far off track. And then I finally go back to the window at night, and I'm like, that crate is a different color. And then you just push the crate over. And so, yeah, that's my forklift story. So I can't wait for the forklift someday. I'm really looking forward to it, apparently.
I want to let's finish off on QTEs, because we've mentioned them a couple of times. This was actually, as far as I can tell, this is the first QTE. I think we mentioned that last time.
Yeah,
and actually,
the
original invented the term as well.
Yeah, originally it was called Quick Timer Events.
Yeah,
and then shortened to Quick Time Events, QTEs. And this is the game that's credited to it. But I did write a note down that nobody ever brings up, but it always bugs me, that Dragon's Lair and Space Ace were also basically QTE.
They're effectively all QTE games. Yeah. I mean, the whole game is that. Yes. That's true. In fact, I mentioned that on the stream, that those are probably earlier examples. Dragon and Cliffhangers, Badlands. There's a whole bunch of them that I played back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Classics. But this was
laserdisc games. For those of you out there who haven't seen those games, they were fully animated games that played off of laserdiscs and used the sort of random access of laserdiscs, like a DVD where you could skip forward and skip back to different scenes. They basically jump to another scene on the disc based on your input. So you just got to places where you had a period where you could branch, and effectively the characters would play through a scene where there was a brief period where you were allowed to interact. And if you interact in one way, you get a failure state, and if you interact in another way, you get progressing through the scene. And then they were just challenges, follow the prompts, because they literally would flash things on the screen. I guess they wouldn't put up like arrows, but they would flash elements in the environment. Direction. Right. Yeah. And that would kind of give an indication of which direction to push the joystick. Dragon's Lair being the biggest one. That was Don Bluth's animation studio who did that one. And I believe Space Ace.
Space Ace, yeah. Yeah. I just remember those are revelatory games for me for whatever reason. Especially
I love them. Yeah.
It's like, but I was never good at them. But
I was terrible at them. But I ended up getting Dragon's Lair for the Game Boy much later and beat it on that. So I finally beat it when it came out for the Game Boy.
Unlimited credits.
Yeah.
That's
when you get to a certain age, you have unlimited credits anyway. Let's be honest.
Okay.
I just spent my way through Dragon's Lair. Yeah. Could have bought a cabinet for crying out loud.
Right, exactly. So QTEs though, and so we talked.
What's your favorite one?
My favorite one is, I think, the first one, and I think I maybe failed one other one, but I think it's the only one I've failed. And it was the soccer ball. It was just one button press.
Right, yeah.
Very beginning where soccer, and it's just with the kids, and they kick a soccer ball towards you, and it's just totally hit me in the head and bounced off. I failed it, and then it hit the kid in the head, and he cried, and I just thought that was a hilarious first QTE to introduce you to the, that results in a kid being, getting a concussion from a soccer ball.
It comes back later too, because a couple of thugs accost you, right? Yeah. And have the soccer ball as well. Yeah.
It's brilliant. It's like, the soccer ball's back, and this time it saved my life, hilarious. But then the reason I bring it up is the flashlight's my second favorite, because it's just such a one simple little moment, and actually I probably failed that one too, because I just didn't see it coming, because it's just like direction arrow for a moment, and then you have to catch the flashlight. So,
right.
But most of the time they're associated with fighting scenes or something, action scenes.
Right. And of course, we've played God of War, which uses them quite heavily to sort of have its more dramatic moments. And it is funny that in this one, it can be anything. There has been a scene where there's been quite a number of them strung together that I failed again and again and again, comically, because it's a scene that's a lot funnier to keep failing. The more you fail, the funnier it starts to get after a while. But anyway, there's a lot of times where these are just sort of mini moments. They're not, it's just like you said, the one button press. And if you fail them, and this is kind of different than I think in God of War, where I think probably if you failed enough, you just died. Maybe you started the whole boss fight over again. I don't recall. I probably never failed.
Well, in some cases you can fail and continue. It just isn't right as
right. Yeah, it's a soft failure. Yeah, it's not. Yeah. In this case, it's you have to do the thing because the dramatic moment had to occur. You had to catch the flashlight, otherwise you get caught. It would have been a whole different thing if I also had to sneak in 6 nights in a row and kept missing the flashlight. And never, it was like, come back again tomorrow. If I had failed that as well as the stealth sections, I think I would have been pulling my hair out.
Yeah,
we'd be past Christmas, and I would be. I'd still be doing the stealth thing.
Yeah, it's a funny little mechanic that, now that we're finally playing this game, that I'm finally playing this game after all these years, and knowing intellectually that it was always the game that was given the credit for creating them. I can totally see now why they exist in this game for the type of game that it is, that we kind of just talked at length about. But it's just so funny to me how they were taken from this game and what has been using them ever since. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's just like, it's, and I'm not saying that in fact, I'm probably blanking on something, but no, well, of course, Tomb Raider, we did them in Tomb Raider as well. And, you know, and then one of my favorite examples, which is, a bit of a spin on them, but at the end of Metal Gear Solid 4, or
4.
No, it's just 4. Yeah, you're okay. In the microwave room where you're crawling through the microwave waves and being basically cooked. But it's just so funny how this one simple thing has just been expanded upon over the time, you know, over the years. And God of War is really the perfect example where they just integrated fully into this high action game. You know, and it worked for the most part in the time. We go back and listen to those episodes if you want to hear our perspectives on that. But to see where it started and why it started here, and then where people, it's just funny to see what people do with things once something sticks.
That is, I mean, to bring Cage back into it, that is a thing that I actually think is generally fairly successful in his games, is that the motions that they find to do different things. Like there was a thing with playing the guitar or something, I think in one of those two, Heavy Rain, or I think actually was Fahrenheit, the Indigo Prophecy here in the US, was, you know, a section where you picked up a guitar and you could kind of play, and it felt fairly natural, like the motions that were chosen. Like there was a lot of like, hey, we want to do a different thing. It's basically an animation that you're going to trigger, but we want to try to find ways that feel very natural and not really as abstract. So they might be moving particular ways on the, you know, with the sticks or something like that. Like, oh, you're going to be strumming or something, so you're going to want to pull the sticks down kind of in a rhythmic way or whatever. I don't remember if that's specifically how that one worked, but I definitely can remember moments of that in those games where you definitely felt like, oh, this motion feels natural to the thing that I'm doing. And that's happening a lot here. You know, they're mostly directionals, like, oh, you know, put out your arm towards the, the falling flashlight, or, you know, to block the soccer ball or what have you. All feels kind of natural. And I think that those are often when they're at their best. You know, when it's just like match the button on the screen, I think they're just less successful, you know, and have to be used pretty sparingly. I think with God of War, they were still fresh enough that it was like, oh, okay, I can't imagine how to make this thing happen. I mean, I'd love it if I could play the game where I'm doing that and it feels natural to do that with the controls, but that's a big ask for all that game's trying to do. You know, so yeah, as you said, you can go back and listen to us talk about that. So it kind of worked, but it gets old. It gets pretty stale as a mechanic as time goes on. You know, there's a lot of reasons why we don't play laserdisc style games anymore.
Yeah. Well, and Shenmue doesn't, I mean, I think to your point about the David Cage stuff, because they're associated with actions that fit within what the context of the scene. And I think the most successful ones are, you know, that's why they're usually, the context is what makes them more successful. The interesting thing about Shenmue is because it's not a mechanically rich game, you know, pressing X versus B versus A doesn't mean anything typically in the game. So there's not a meaning to attach to those. The direction is much easier because you're always walking around. And so moving in the world is something you're doing all the time. And so direction makes more sense. Do you know what I mean? But like X is for me usually, it's the notebook. So it's like, why would I press the notebook button? you know, and then this. So they're the meaning of the buttons is not consistent in that case. But I think, and I don't know if that's the case in the David Cage games. I don't remember how that works. But I'm blanking on. But there's been some that have done a really good job at, like I think maybe the God of War reboot did a better job.
Oh yeah,
using, like, you know, the button you would press would be the button that you would normally press in real-time combat or whatever, and so for a QTE, so it made a lot more sense.
Well, there is that the one that I like that's quite long and drawn out. There's a couple points where you have to jump, and it is I'm playing on a PlayStation controller, so it's the X button for me. It'd be an A button for you, and that is the legs when you're fighting. So it does make sense that you're.
Oh yeah, try a little
jumping.
bit.
Yeah.
So they try some. Well, maybe I just don't. Maybe I'm wrong on that, and maybe I just don't know enough about the combat. So maybe X. I'm sorry, I'm swapping. Is there something where people are trying to fix the nomenclature for the PlayStation controller and make sure that?
Oh, it's supposed to be cross. Yeah. Sony says that's what it's called, but whatever. Yeah, the cross. Pardon me, the cross.
When I say X, I'm talking about on a Xbox controller. Yeah. So that's the button. But anyway,
the blue button.
I don't remember what it does in combat mode, so it might actually mirror what's going on. I'm basically, we haven't talked about combat
it's
at
the
all.
Hands. Yeah, we haven't. I put it on our list. That's punching is your X button, which would be the left button. Up is dodge. Right is grab.
Oh, grab. Okay, that's what B is then. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. Maybe
Y, I guess, is the dodge. I was trying to remember what the buttons are on the Xbox controller. And then A is the legs, is the kicks. So
then I would say, then it's just the fact that I've done so little combat, and it's so, up to this point, it's been so minimal that there's no way I'm going to equate. Because with good QTE design, what you want is we did try to do this. Yeah, we did try to do this with Tomb Raider, in fact. That's why I'm bringing it up. Like, we would try to have some sort of semblance of logic. So when the player does it, it feels good, but also they don't have to make so many mental leaps about what to press because it's so quick action, and punishing if you fail. So, anyway, this is where it all began.
It is. All right. Well, we were gonna do some feedback this week, but we're almost an hour and 15 in. So actually, I'm thinking maybe we'll just push that off. And
all right.
And give ourselves a quick time exit event. That's not great. Also. Production note, we're going to take the week of Christmas off. The next episode will be dropping on Christmas Day. Tim's got family coming in. I'm planning on making myself pie. So I think
it's pie. It's a pie season for you.
Oh, I love myself some pie. Yeah. Chocolate cream pie this time. So we're going to take next week off. And then the following week, we will have our end of year for New Year's. We've had some good interviews this year. I think 4, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think 4 this year. So we'll be able to look back on those. Oh no, actually 5, excuse me. So I look forward to looking back at some of those and any other sort of, reminiscences we want to have and sort of top takeaways from the year. Always a fun one to look back on the year. And then we will return to this, and I think we will aim to finish Shenmue for our next episode, which will be that second week of January.
In the ballpark?
Yes, we are. Because I know our next thing is going to be, if you had gotten to where I am, your next thing would be getting a job. Forklifts. And then we would be getting the money to
Hong Kong,
to actually go to Hong Kong.
And does the game end in Hong Kong?
And the game ends in Hong Kong. I think there are 2. I have consulted walkthroughs, and there's basically 2 what they people have broken down into chapters, but they're just kind of story beats, because there are no real chapters in this game. But that is a decidedly different location. The second location was the docks, and I was thinking, well, we would try to get to the point where we're actually at the third location, which is Hong Kong, and then just do the Hong Kong stuff to finish. But there's not a lot, I don't think, before we get there, and we've got I guess that makes 3 weeks to do it, so you should be able to. Oh yeah, you should be able to find a little bit of time here and there to do that between now and then.
Yep.
Okay. Well, you can shoot us more Shenmue reminiscences or what have you to devgameclub@gmail.com. and we'd love to have those, as well as any reviews you might want to send our way. Those have been great. I haven't had a singing review in a while. I want to point out that someone suggested on the streaming I do that I would have to sing a Little Drummer Boy version if anybody sung that in. I might put the kibosh on that. I might just put it out there like, I'm not a fan of that song. I don't know if I want to hear that. I try to go all year without hearing the Little Drummer Boy.
Has this come up before and I forgot? Is this a thing with you?
It is a thing with me, but it's not come up before. Yeah. Now you know. Right. Now you're like, now I know to play every time you come over my house. Your wife will brain you with a frying pan because she'll be like, I don't want to hear that either. Anyway. Hit us up through those means to give us feedback. We really appreciate it. In the meantime, I will still be streaming a bit over the holidays at twitch.tv/Brett Douville. I am playing this, but I'm also playing Persona 5. Maybe we can find some time over the break to get in. We got to do some Dead Minds. Yep. I've now got 2 characters who are in Dead Minds character range level.
Oh, you do?
I have a rogue. So
I did a silly thing that I don't need to say now, but yeah.
Well, so I'm not for that stream.
Yep. You can. Yeah, we should schedule some time to play together. I still need catch up time, which I'm trying to do.
Okay. Yeah. Well, if you find your time, let me know. We'll do it. And I'll put it out there on the Twitter at DevGameClub, where you can also find my co-host at
Tim Longo Jr. with a JR at the end.
Have so much fun playing some games over the holidays, and we'll see you in the new year. Good night.
Good night.
And a very happy decade end to all of you.